start, can I start this sign-off sheet? Can everybody please try and make sure that you do sign it? Otherwise you'll find me sending you nasty emails. Last week was, I just marked it all out. One down, one down. Sorry, you had a question, you had a serious question, sorry. Was that it? See, I anticipated, I knew it. That's why one gets to be a professor. Already got a question. tradition of this course, and it's kind of alternating dynamic. This week we've got Ed Keller, who is a kind of visiting lecturer, but as some of you know, Ed runs one of the sections in the course and has done since the first year of the course. Ed is an architect-educated, transdisciplinary designer, writer and musician, also rock climber, mountain climber. Is Associate Dean of Distributed Learning and Technology at Parsons, teaches also in School of Design Strategies and on this program. Before joining Parsons, he taught design studios and seminars at Columbia University, Graduate School of Art and Planning, from 1998 to 2010. He's also taught at SkyArt. He was the founder coordinator of their Media Scapes and Des program, and he's taught in Miami, UPenn, Pratt, RPR, and many various other places. He co-founded the AUM studio, sorry, from 2003 to the present, which is an architecture and new media firm which has produced a variety of projects and competitions, which has been shown quite extensively across Europe, America, and Asia. So, with that, welcome in.
Thanks, Clyde. Thank you very much. Can you folks hear me? Yes, microphone is working. Okay, so this is going to be a bit of a whirlwind. Let's see if I can finish by 12:30. Last year when I did a talk, at the end of the talk, we had a brief sort of discussion in the room. Jamer did a talk also. Jamer did a very beautiful talk on scaling, which you'll probably see some kind of version of in a few weeks when he comes in and talks. And someone in the audience said something like, they had a comment, they were like, I understood everything Jamer said. I didn't understand a single thing that you said. This is a different talk, but you might find yourself in the same position. So just, if something isn't making sense, just go along for the ride. I'm going to show a lot of film clips. So Clive wanted me to talk about temporality in design and this title, Techno-Political Futures. And this was really exciting because it crossed over with a bunch of other talks that I've been doing and work that I've been doing and teaching that I've been doing. So let me do a very quick introduction to a couple of key issues around artifact, apparatus, time, techno-political future, and then I'll start showing film clips. And I'll be talking about the film clips, introducing them, interrupting them, and kind of commenting on them using this case studies. So design thinking is always about through and in time. When we design, we're defining future horizons for systems, for the users, for the people who are going to be encountering the designs that we've made, and we're making these decisions based on world systems that we're familiar with. It's kind of received knowledge. We get information, that's the criteria for design, we propagate it back out into the world. And we're using these kind of complex social technical legacies that we often really are unconscious of. We don't really know where they came from. That's what this course is trying to do, is it's trying to have an intense dialogue about where they came from and what we're doing critically with them and how we're driving them forward. So what I'm going to do in this talk is kind of offer approaches that could help us to maintain design thinking that simultaneously engages the near and the far, both spatially, stuff that's very, very microscopic and close, and stuff that's very large and far away, but also the stuff that's very close temporally and very far away temporally. And I'm going to talk about what that means. I also want to set up a framework to critically evaluate the conceptual apparatus that we use to do design, the tools and the models. I'm going to talk about models a bunch and try to expose some of the strengths and weaknesses. There are some key questions. Again, I'm just unpacking a kind of paragraph description here. How can we construct practical, technical, and intellectual models of systems, which we then use as tools in the design process? So the model gets folded into the design process itself. What scales of time are we working on when we design, when we do technology, culture, when we design? How do we mix the social-political world of design with the different time scales of the natural world? To what degree do we actually, as designers, have agency? This is a theme that's come up in a number of the talks, live talks and other talks. How much do we really know about what we're designing when we're designing? We think we know, but how much do we really know about what we're doing when we design and when we produce artifacts? And then, what are the connections between objects, humans, populations of humans, systems, and landscapes? So, what's an artifact anyway? The landscape that artifacts are produced by, and that they operate in, can be cultural, it can be material, technological, biological. All of these systems come together to kind of produce artifacts. Artifacts are a kind of a valve condition that gathers flows from all those systems and concretizes it or reunifies it in a system, a single system. So again, I'd argue that regardless of the substrate, this landscape that produces artifacts, that artifacts live in, is always temporal. And in a way, I'm talking about the relation between the scapes that the objects operate in, and again, this idea of model or apparatus that we use to both produce design, but also to think about it. How do we become reflective and conscious of what we're doing as designers? Any design determines a future. You make something, someone uses it, you've built a possible future for them. If you limit the possible futures, you close down their avenues into the future, and you also close down what they can remember, what they bring forward from the past into the present and on into the future. So representational models give us access to the kind of life world that things live within or operate within. And using the term life is a little dangerous, but that things live within. Or anyway, our representational models, we think, gives us access to that life world. So I keep saying that design implies temporality or thinking about time or producing possible futures. I want to outline two ways of thinking about time. One is one that we're familiar with, metric, measured. We're familiar about breaking time down into steps, seconds, years, centuries. And then the operation of design across those metrics. But then there's a less obviously metric kind of temporality, which is more like a horizon, with possible futures and possible pasts.
El misterio de la ciencia atraviesa el tiempo. Al pie de las cúpulas hay otros mensajes que también vienen de lejos. Estas piedras, dibujadas por los pastores precolombinos, tienen más de 1000 años. Aquí, más que en ninguna otra parte, yo tengo la impresión que el desierto nos revela un secreto.
Todas las experiencias que uno tiene en la vida, en realidad, y digamos sensoriales, incluso esta conversación, ocurren en el pasado, aunque sean millonésimas o milésimas de segundo. Pero, claro, o sea, la cámara que yo estoy mirando ahora está a unos cuantos metros de distancia y por lo tanto está a unos millonésimas o algo así, digamos, de tiempo atrás, en el pasado, respecto al tiempo que yo tengo en mi reloj, ¿no? Porque la señal se demora en llegar. La luz de la cámara o la luz tuya reflejada se demora en llegar a mí, digamos, una fracción de segundo, una fracción muy pequeña de segundo, porque la velocidad de la luz es muy rápida. ¿Okay?
¿Cuánto tarda la luz de la luna en llegar hasta aquí?
Poco más de un segundo.
¿Y el sol?
8 minutos.
O sea, nada se ve forzosamente en el instante que se ve.
No, es que esa es la trampa. El presente no existe. Realmente, o sea, el único presente que existe, y si es que, es lo que yo tengo en mi mente, digamos, mi conciencia. Eso yo podría decir que es lo más cercano al presente absoluto. Y ni siquiera, porque probablemente cuando yo lo pienso, la señal se demora entre mis sentidos, digamos. O sea, yo digo, yo soy yo, y me toco, ya eso ya hay un cierto atraso, digamos. El pasado yo creo que es la gran herramienta de los astrónomos. Nosotros somos manipuladores del pasado. Estamos acostumbrados a vivir atrasados. Esa es la idea.
Es como un arqueólogo que también está trabajando sobre el pasado.
Exactamente. Sí. Es un pasado más cercano, pero es lo mismo, efectivamente.
Sí. Tratando de imaginar.
Claro, exacto.
Y con un historiador pasa lo mismo.
Claro, y con un geólogo también, que va a ver las distintas capas y empieza, a medida que van abajo, sabe que son cosas muy viejas generalmente. Aquí es lo mismo.
sea que el presente es una línea muy delgada.
Es una línea, claro, que yo creo que uno sopla un poquito y se destruye. Sí. Sí.
So this fellow is an astronomer working in Chile at the observatory in the Atacama Desert. And that's a clip from Nostalgia for the Light a couple of years ago, Patricia Guzman's film, which I'm going to show a few more clips from, so I'll describe a little bit more as we go along. So how many different models of time or forms of time or sites within which time operates can we think of? And hopefully that short clip was very evocative from a scientist's point of view of different kinds of time and different ways of relating oneself and one's consciousness to the landscape of time. That's very real, it's very physical. How many models? Geological time, genetic time, prehistorical time, cosmological time, which we just heard a little bit about, city time versus agricultural time, linear versus cyclical, measured chronos versus unmeasured ion, reversible or predictable time that would be measured by classical physics as a model, used as a model, or irreversible and unmeasurable and wild time, which is closer to thermodynamic and dissipative structures. So now let's look at some films. I'm going to start with complex systems, and then some examples of complex systems where the characters are struggling to grasp what's going on in the landscape. And then the second section, I'm going to talk about models and apparatus. And then in the third section, I'm going to talk about contemporary challenges, which are more about the techno-political. So it's going to be 3 chunks, and each chunk has about 4 or 5 films in it. Complex systems, models and apparatus, and contemporary challenges. So, The Exorcist. What is going on in this amazing film? Well, the first 20 minutes, the opening sequence, we're presented with an amazing image of multitude. Working the earth, working with temporality of the earth, exhuming something that's been buried intentionally, the discovery of an unearthing of a demon, Azusa. And this provides us with a clear model of a kind of multiplicitous body, which we usually find quite difficult to imagine. Both the people who are doing this work and the demon itself, which is Legion. So the kind of visibility of possession of this young girl in a tiny Washington, D.C. suburb by a demon that emerges from the Middle East, which is exhumed by a Christian scientist, is the great plot line in The Exorcist. But this kind of image of the multiplicitous bodies interacting with the earth and finding the traces of a kind of a deep time is one of the most important parts for me, and that's the first 20 minutes, and then the other 2 hours of the film almost are just, projectile vomit and so forth. But still, fascinating film, but the first part is really where the action is for me. It's also an amazing meditation on time, a meditation on time that's reversible and irreversible, the time of ruin, the time of the archive, what happens when linear time, or you could maybe argue Western time comes into contact with nonlinear time or other models of time. The human, both the girl who gets possessed, but also the demon, functions as a kind of a wicker basket. The human is a site. She's braided, she can hold certain things, yet let other things pass through her. So, let's see a short clip or two from this film. And you see the opening sequence is extraordinary, the way that, maybe I'll comment on the stills and then show the clip. Talked about the multiplicity here. It's explicit in the way that it underscores measured time versus the time that's being called forth by the demon being released. And the relationship of that to a kind of a geological or planetary scale time. The juxtaposition between savagery and rationality, the almost cosmological force of the demon, and the way that they face each other off. And this is an amazing shot which crossfades between them. You hear dogs fighting in the background, and it crossfades to the sun in front of them, and then it crossfades to this Washington, D.C. suburb. So the geopolitics of the opening of Exorcist are also extraordinary.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا Step.